Okay, so Merrick Garland, appointed a special prosecutor for the Biden classified documents thing, right? No, before we get excited about that, let's not forget the outcome so far of another special prosecutor, John Durham, and what his outcomes have been, which have been essentially nothing. Okay, John Durham has accomplished nothing. Robert Barnes said on one of his Viva and Barnes podcasts a long time ago, and I wasn't aware of this so much at the time, but until he said it, it made sense, which is whenever a special prosecutor is appointed for a scandal, their job is not so much to understand the truth of what happened, but instead to cover up the truth of what happened, to find scapegoats, to clean up the evidence, and to make this problem go away, to make it appear to be resolved. And, if you notice John Durham, in all of his investigations so far, he's, for the most part, besides Kleinsmith, I think he was involved with Kleinsmith, but other than Kleinsmith, he has steered himself well clear of the institutions like the FBI and the CIA. He hasn't really gone into uncovering scandals within the FBI and CIA. Instead, picking on lawyers and other third-party people from the civilian world who came in and were involved, and that's who he's focusing on. So what he's been trying to do essentially is shift the blame away from the FBI and CIA and over to third parties. And then he goes to the D.C. courts and files suit in the D.C. courts. And he should never, I think he knew better than that. I think John Durham must have known that none of these people, that no politically charged case was going to go his way in a D.C. Circuit, in the D.C. courts, federal courts. So here comes Merrick Garland. First of all, we have to look at who Merrick Garland is appointing as special who is appointing the special prosecutor, which is Merrick Garland, who is incredibly corrupt, who's proven himself to be incredibly corrupt. And most likely the special prosecutor is going to be some, person nobody's ever heard of, because they tend to keep these types of cleanup crew people on a low key. Nobody knew who John Durham was until, people knew back in the Whitey Bulger days, and then he disappeared from public life, and then he comes back to clean up. So he cleaned up the Whitey Bulger scandal, and then he's cleaning up the Russiagate scandal as best as he can. That's his job. His job is to make things. The special prosecutor's job is to conduct an investigation, and then to find some people to blame. And then to make the issue appear to be resolved so that the American people, regain some sort of trust in the institutions. That's the idea. I don't think causing the American people to regain trust in the institutions is possible at this point. So there's that. And, here's the problem with America. The problem with America is not that you have a corrupt political class or a corrupt bureaucratic class or a corrupt corporate sector. The problem with America is that the average citizen in this country does not understand how their country works, even how it works on paper according to conventional wisdom, let alone how it works in reality. So if you have an electorate that doesn't have a clue how their own government works, then obviously they're going to continue to elect incompetent and corrupt leaders, because all that has to happen at that point is a politician has to go out there and sound nice and say whatever the fuck he wants, and then after that, all is good. The American people will vote for him. That's what happened with Biden. I'm not a fan of Trump, but he did try to do some of the stuff he said he was going to do. But then again, he did a lot of stuff I am very much against with Trump. And the next guy who's not going to be Trump, whoever it is, it's probably going to be a Democrat. Who knows? It might be Hakeem Jeffries. I don't know. But the American people will elect another incompetent president. They will continue to elect, by and large, incompetent, corrupt representatives. And that's why the downfall of this country is already set in stone. It's written, as they say in the Middle East. It's already written. And all we have to do as anarchists is sit back and watch the show, because these institutions are crumbling and there's no way to stop it. Again, it's because the people of this country have been so dumbed down by mass media that they literally have no clue how their political and governmental system works. Okay? And you're not going to fix that. You can't fix that level of stupid. You got the boomers who have been indoctrinated from mass media, the worst of all. Here's what I've noticed. You have this age range of people from like the late 50s to that were born in the anywhere born from the late 50s to maybe the mid 80s or early 80s, my time really, who they're particularly indoctrinated. Their entire education, outside of what they did in formal education, which is forgotten after a few years after leaving formal education, their entire education, for the most part, for the average person, consists of what they see on mass media. Okay? So, consequently, you have an entire generation, the boomer generation, that their conception of how the government works is a complete fantasy. And given that they're vested in this fantasy, and that they are entitled certain things like Social Security and Medicaid coming up here, okay, they're going to continue to believe that fantasy no matter what. Because their own safety and security and well-being relies on believing that fantasy. Okay, if that makes any sense. So those people are never going to come about. Now, the younger generations are much more discerning and scrupulous because they don't see the TV as the primary source of information, whereas the boomers do, the millennials and younger generation do not. And so that is actually a very encouraging sign. And what's interesting to me is that the older generations, people that were born in the 30s and 40s that are still around, I know a couple of them, they're much more discerning as well. So that's because they weren't essentially raised on mass media. So they understand, how understanding the world really works. It consists of getting different sources and figuring out for yourselves. The boomers have no conception of that, because, and that like I'm saying, the majority of the boomers don't have a conception of that. I'm just making an observation based on my experience here. Their conception of the world comes from people on TV who are taking whatever sources they want and telling them the conclusions that they should come to. So, I don't know. I just wanted to say a few things there. I am out.